Bismillah Rahman Rahim. In this session, we will discuss section 2.3 transfer of thermal energy uh, from O-level physics books written by Tom Decken and Heather Kennett. And this is very important topic. A knowledge of how thermal energy travels is needed to keep a building or a house at a comfortable temperature in winter and summer. So it is to be done economically and efficiently. So this knowledge of thermal energy is used in heating and ventilation of rooms or building. So test yourself, page 116 from this book. Explain what is meant by thermal conduction. Thermal conduction is the flow of thermal energy through matters from places of high temperature to places of lower temperature without movement of the matter as a whole. So the matter will stay at its own position, but it's vibrate and it transfer its energy to its neighboring particles, and this way the energy transfers. So this is thermal conduction. Explain on page 118. Explain the advantage of placing an electric immersion heater in a tank of water near the top. The convection is the usual method by which the thermal energy or heat travels through fluid such as liquid and gases from place of higher temperature to the place of lower temperature by movement of fluid itself. The water at the surface at the top will be cooled and moved on, and convection process is started. So that hot water, if it is placed inside, so the water will heat up and rise up at the surface where it gets cooled on, and because of high density it will again move down. So near the bottom, the water at the bottom will be relatively heated and move upward because of low density, and surface water will move downward by gravity, and the convection process works very efficiently. So this is the convection current will develop. Why does hot air rise? Because of low density. They rises when a fluid is heated, it becomes expand and less dense, and it forced upward by surrounding cooler, denser fluid which moves under it. We say hot water or air rises. So that is why we say the hot air or water or fluid always rises, because it expands and its density decreases. Test yourself on page 121. The door canopy in figure 2.13 shows clearly the difference between the white and black surfaces when radiation falls on them. Explain why. When radiation falls on an object, it is partly reflected, partly transmitted, and partly absorbed. The absorbed radiation raises the temperature of the object. White surfaces are good reflector of radiation, while black surfaces are good absorber of radiation. So black surfaces absorb radiation and white surfaces reflect radiation. Buildings in hot countries are often painted white because white surfaces are good reflector of radiation, and so help to keep the houses cool. So light colors gives cool feeling because it reflects the heat. What type of radiation is a thermal radiation? The radiation has all the properties of electromagnetic waves and travels with the speed of light. Thermal radiation is infrared radiation, and all objects emit this radiation. All hot objects emit this radiation. When it falls on an object, it partly reflected, partly transmitted, and partly absorbed. The absorbed radiation raises the temperature of the object. So this absorbed part, it actually increases the temperature. Why is frost less likely on a cloudy night than a clear one? Frost less likely on a cloudy night because the cloud blankets and prevent the heat that radiates from the earth at night from rising into the atmosphere. Thus keeps the earth's surface warm. So this gives a blanketing effect, and as a result the temperature of the earth's surface will be warmer. Therefore no frost usually observed on a cloudy night than a clear one. Temperature and rate of emission of radiation. Radiation is emitted by all bodies above absolute zero and consist mostly of infrared radiation, but lights and ultraviolets are also present if the body is very hot, like for example the sun. For an object to maintain a constant temperature, energy must transfer away from the object at the same rate the object receives energy. For an object to be maintained its temperature, the energy supplied and energy taken away should be same, so the temperature will be constant. If the average energy radiated is less than absorbed, then the temperature of the object will rise. If the average energy radiated is more than that absorbed, the temperature of the object will fall. So this is simple reason for maintaining the temperature. The energy input and output same. If input energy is more absorbed and less release, then temperature will rise. If the absorbed radiation, the energy release is more than absorbed, then its temperature will fall. Test yourself on page 125. Explain why on a cloud day the metal handle bags of bicycle feels colder than the rubber grips. Because the metal handle has high thermal conductivity and therefore conduct heat away from one's skin more rapidly. So when we touch our skin on the metal part, it takes away the heat from our body. That's why it gives a cooling effect. So it feels colder. On the other hand, the rubber grippers have low thermal conductivity or bad conductor, so it does not takes away the heat energy from our skin. So that's why we do not feel colder on a rubber grips. So 8. Identify the energy transfer which occurs when a radiator is used to cool the engine of a car. Both conduction and radiation occurs in a car radiator, which acts to dissipate the heat generated in the engine. It contains a fluid which circulates between the engine block and the radiator. The thermal energy is transferred to the fluid by conduction as it passes over the engine block. So in the engine block, the fluid gets the energy in a conduction process. When the fluid enters the radiator, the thermal energy is transferred by conduction to the radiator, which then radiate energy in the infrared to the surrounding. Where the fan also gives a force cooling. So the metal radiator is black and has a large surface, so it is a good emitter of radiation. So that's why the fins are black and for a good emission of radiation. In this way, the fluid is cooled before it circulates back to the engine. So this is the way the radiator works in a car engine. When a room is heated by a coal fire, the radiation and convection process occurs in this heating process of a coal fire. When a room is heated by a wood or a coal burning fire, the thermal energy is radiated from the burning wood or a coal and heats up object in the room, which absorb it. Air in contact with the hot wood or coal is warm and rises upward because it is less dense than the cold air above. The cold air is drawn down to take its place, and convection current is set up, which also transfer thermal energy into the room. So that's why the room becomes warm.